What is up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of the Panthers Brawl podcast. We are one of the new podcasts created by the Brawl podcast group. They've got about 20 NFL podcasts for each of the different teams in the NFL, and they're making more each and every day. So we are super thankful to everybody at the Brawl broadcast exec team for allowing us to start this podcast. It's something really cool for all of us. It's a great opportunity. So to start off, we're going to introduce ourselves. We've got 4 co-hosts. I know it's a lot, but we all have very strong opinions about the Panthers. So first off, my name is Jack Taylor. I'm a senior at the University of South Carolina, a broadcast journalism major. We're in our studio right now. I've lived in Charlotte all my life. Been a Panthers fan since birth, and I've stuck with them through thick and thin, and I'm so happy to be a part of this.
Yeah, my name is Shanti Stewart. I'm from Union, South Carolina, here in the upstate of South Carolina. I've been a Panthers fan all my life. I'm a senior broadcast journalism major here at the University of South Carolina. And again, just been a Panthers fan since I was young, so I just happy for the opportunity to talk about Carolina Panthers football.
Cool. Well, my name is Jeff Taylor. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I guess I'm the veteran of the crew here. I'm the dad, I guess, of the crew. And so proud to be a part of it and what we're doing here. It's pretty cool things. Living in Charlotte, keep up with the Panthers. Now, I will preface it by saying I'm a Titans fan, but I love the Panthers. I've enjoyed watching them over the years and just look so forward to doing this podcast and just getting some information out and some thoughts. It's going to be cool, and we're going to have a good time.
Yeah, Tyler Bursky, I'm for your EPA, and I write for Whole Night Sports. Covers the drafts in the SEC. And funny story, actually, about how I became a Panthers fan. So I was getting into football, and I knew, Notre Dame, all right? So I knew Jimmy Clausen was the quarterback. And so I was getting to the NFL, and I was like, all right, what team's Jimmy Clausen on? Going through my phone. Carolina Panthers, all right. So I guess I'm a fan, and we see where that went, but I guess I'm still a fan now, so I'm glad. But Jimmy didn't really turn out, let's just say.
Yeah, I think he's better off.
Yeah, not really.
After him. What made you say, after Jimmy left?
Oh, well, to be honest with you, I was mad when they drafted Cam because that was in the same time frame as that, but just actually Cam was what kept me around, early on in his career. I realized he was such a fun player, and, looking into his story at Auburn and, just the success that they had and what they were building from. They were 2-14 when I started liking them, and they were slowly growing, and that's what kept me around.
Yeah, and I guess we actually probably should thank Jimmy Clausen, because if it wasn't for him, we would never be in the position to.
I thank him.
That 2-14 season was brutal. I remember I would wear my jersey. I was in, good Lord, I think I would have been in 7th or 8th grade maybe.
I was in 8th grade.
And I wore my jersey to middle school, and I got bullied for that in Charlotte. So, yeah, because people, at the time, there was a lot of Fairweather fans, and they had not been good for a while. So very few Fairweather fans. So we've got a lot packed in for this first episode. I know it's the off season, but it's been one of the more aggressive and kind of disappointing off seasons so far for the Panthers. A lot has gone down and a lot has changed. So we're going to get right to that. First off, though, I keep getting texts. First, starting off, we will get to all those topics, but I do think being in the sports world and being a part of the sports community, you've seen it all the past couple of days. You can't not talk about it. We would all here, like to wish our, we would like to send our prayers and thoughts to the Bryant family, as well as the family of all the others affected in that horrific helicopter accident. We lost one of the greatest competitors ever, one of the best basketball players and best businessmen to ever walk the planet. And I think that really made the whole world stand still. And no matter what sport you watched, or no matter what team, you rooted for, or any part of that, worldwide, people, celebrities and stars, they all shared their sympathies for the Bryant family, and especially with the loss of Gigi as well. We even saw it in our own home. We saw Cam, we saw MJ, we saw people, even like Greg Olsen, express their thoughts. And Greg actually had something that really resonated with a lot of people, and especially parents. And Jeff, I know you said you had something about that.
Yeah, here's what Greg put out, and it was actually that afternoon after the accident. And he said this: just last week, I read a story on Kobe and how much he has enjoyed his time with his kids in retirement. He talked about coaching his daughter's basketball team and how much he loved showing them how to compete and how to work. His message hit home for me today is heartbreaking. And, when you think about it, guys, not only Greg, but just the way it's kind of hit everybody in that father, child relationship, mother-child relationship, how it's just kind of hit that. When we think about Greg, he's been on the cusp of whether or not to retire. Do I play one more year? And I got to be honest, after reading that, I think that when the season kicks off here in 2020, you're going to see Greg Olsen, I think, for working for Fox. I just don't, what his family's been through with his kid's medical condition. And he saw what happened there. And you've seen the pictures of Kobe and Gigi at courtside and stuff, and him talking with her. I don't see how he doesn't walk away from it. And who could blame him? And the gist is, you talk about Kobe, and you all reach it at some point, and I'll give you this aspect of it. Everybody talks about Kobe reaching another part of his life, a second career or whatever. As parents, we do that. We get to that point where what we've done in the past doesn't matter. What matters is our kids and how we support them and how we work with them to make sure they have a better life than we do. So between you and me and everybody out there, listen, Greg has, he's done all he can do. And personally, I think he walks away.
Yeah, I definitely think Greg walks away. At this point, there's really not much he can really prove. I think he's come to peace with his career and what he's accomplished in Carolina. Obviously, the 3 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons, first tight end in NFL history to do that. I don't think he's really pushing for much more. I think he's seen his own mortality with his career as far as like the injuries and stuff as of late. And think the Kobe tragedy put everything into perspective for him and a lot of athletes. I think, again, we're living in different times now too. I think athletes they're not going to be looking to stay in these games for 15 years like we've seen in generations past. I think a lot of these guys are getting used to the fact that I may only have a 9-year career, but if I can have a great 9 years, be healthy, then I'll do it.
And Ty, would you move into the broadcast side? I mean, I know a lot of people have talked about that. I think it's something that could be really cool.
Yeah, with the way the game's going, with the injuries and the timeline of careers, I think it's just going down. I think he'll realize that with the injuries and the family situation, and then as you said, his career as like a color commentator. I think he's done really well with that, and in like spurts where he's done. So I think that might be his next step, and just the legacy he'll leave. Like, can we just talk about how the Panthers fleeced the Bears in that trade back in 2012? The 3rd-round pick for Greg Olsen. Like, I mean, I'd say we won that one. So, but he's just been such a great impact for the team and also the community.
You talk about the legacy, and that's what I think people don't realize with Greg, especially like you were saying, the situation of how he got him. I mean, when you think about that year in 2011, all the changes that had come, new coach, new quarterback, you need new weapons. Smitty's looking like he's the end of his rope. D'Angelo is up in the air. We've got some players that we don't know what they're going to do with. And so our offense was looking for that kind of turnaround. And I think it was hilarious because we had just gotten, before we got Greg, we got Jeremy Shockey, who was the most volatile tight end that was playing at that time. His performance in the Super Bowl with the Giants kind of put him on the map. And then we got him, and we're like, okay, here's our guy. Here's Cam's safety valve. And then we get this other kid who'd been playing for 4 seasons, I think. And we got him for a 3rd-round pick. And you're like, okay, I mean, sure, let's get another tight end. And I think that's the legacy that he will leave, as Sean was saying, the first tight end ever to have 3 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. And I think that had he not broken this for the first time that season after, I think we would have seen a 4th consecutive season. I mean, his performance in that Super Bowl run was one of the best that I've seen. I mean, he was the main weapon for that offense. And now I don't know. I think he'll be a Hall of Famer. I think the question is when. I don't know when he's going to get on.
Yeah. We talked about it earlier. We talked about the bevy of tight ends he played with, as far as like he really crossed different areas in football. When you think about when he broke into the league, which would have been like around 2007, 2008.
His rookie year, yeah.
Antonio Gates would have been the best tight end in football at that point. And he keeps playing, and then Rob Gronkowski's not the best tight end. Now he keeps playing now. Travis Kelce and George Kittle are now considered the best tight ends at that position. It was never a point where he was considered the best which they'll hold against him. But it's not that he wasn't considered the best because he wasn't playing well. He wasn't considered the best because he's played against some of the most freakish athletes at this position. I mean, it was even a point where he played in the NFC South where he wasn't the best tight end in the NFC South with Jimmy Graham being there during his peak. So I mean, it's just a lot of guys play in this during this time frame. They're going to keep him out of the Hall of Fame discussion, at least for first ballot.
I think the one cool thing too, when you think about Greg Olsen, to me, I think about the Hall of Fame and I think about his legacy and stuff. The thing that will always resonate with me is he just always did it with class. He was just a class guy. And we were saying past tense like he is done, but if he does, he's always seemed to have done it the right way. And he's handled things the way that I, would hope a professional football player would handle things. And I haven't seen him waver from that for 1 second. And I think that in itself, as we think about the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and we think about, as Shanti's mentioned, all of these great tight ends, and he kind of just fell in the middle of all this, the consistency that he performed, to me, just goes a long, long way.
Yeah, going through Twitter after this Kobe thing and seeing all the tweets, it wasn't like any career highlights or anything. It was all what he was remembered for as a person. And as much as Kobe, that's what I'll remember about Greg Olsen is what he's done for everyone around him and how he's brought everyone together and helped the team on the field, but more so off the field.
Definitely. And as we were talking about, it's another, like I said before, this offseason specifically has been a time of change for the Panthers. And while we don't know the future of Greg's career, what we do know is that one of the most, honestly, and I mean, this is awful to say, but one of the most shocking moments of this year before Kobe's death, when I saw someone texted me saying Luke Kuechly had retired, I didn't believe it. I thought they were like trying to make me mad or get a rise out of me. And seeing Luke Kuechly retired, I kind of thought if he got another concussion that it would be at the end for him. But what were y'all's reactions to seeing him retire so soon?
Maybe not as shocked as everybody else because I figured he would get to year 10 and call it quits. I figured with the concussions he had prior, it wasn't much more football he had left to give. And I don't think he really left anything on the field that, aside from winning a Super Bowl, that there's really nothing else he could really do because at no point did we never consider him the best linebacker in the game while he played. So I think for him, aside from just the personal preference of wanting to continue to play until he really couldn't anymore, I think we had seen enough of Luke Kuechly to say, you know what, if this is how it ends and this is when he wants to call it quits, then it's been a heck of a career.
I got to thinking about it, and it was kind of those, I remember my youngest texted me saying, I think that, or all of them said, Luke's retiring, and I'm like, wait a minute, what? That one didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. But as you've seen him kind of go through the injuries that he's had, to be man enough to go, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I've got to protect my health. And he's seen other people and the effects that football has had on them. He said, listen, I'm gonna get out while he can. I'm gonna get out while I'm healthy. So props to him. But I was just completely blown away. Let me throw out one other thing, and it's gonna be interesting as we talk about retirements and get back to just Greg and Kobe real quick. It'll be interesting to see this offseason how many guys maybe retire that were on that line when it comes to dads. And the one name I wanted to bring up, and I know this has nothing to do with it, but I'd be so curious as to see what Drew Brees does and whether Drew walks away knowing his family and what his family means and seeing, it'll be curious to see that. But as back to Luke, I was kind of blown away as to what happened there. And did you guys turn out the lights?
No, they cut out on us. Oh, they're both crap. That's kind of
That's a little funny.
I don't know what we'll do with that. Continue. Screw it.
That's live TV. That's live stuff at its finest. But it's interesting. I'm gonna let Tyler take over just a second. But when Luke retired, yeah, it was one of those things you were like, wait a minute, it's not time. But listen, go down as one of the greatest linebackers to ever play the game.
Yeah, naturally getting that alert on my phone, I was like, oh man, he retired. I was upset. I'm like, we got a hole at linebacker now. But when I really thought about it, I was like, it's less about the team and more about him. And I think it should be celebrated that he made the decision to walk away from the game that he loves. And I'm sure he's been playing since he was young. That was not an easy decision for him, I bet. but it was the right decision probably. And you know, seeing him go through all those injuries and like vividly, I remember him in the Saints game, in 2013, getting carted off. That was just not a good sight. And you know, um, he'll have a great impact for the Panthers. I mean, if he'll go into coaching, maybe not. But I mean, his career as a player, I mean, he was there my whole time as a Panthers fan, and you know, he was the staple of that defense and one of the best linebackers in the league his whole career.
Would y'all want to see? I mean, they talked about, I think it was about a day or so after he retired, they put out a tweet saying that he was already in the film room watching tape with the new defensive coordinator, Phil Snow. I would love to see him in whether it's a linebacking coach position or maybe assistant coaching position. I would personally be all for that. I think that, you know, if his body can't give anymore, if he's afraid for his, you know, physical health up there, I mean, if his mind's still there and he still has that same work ethic, I'm all for him coaching with us.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I think his football mind is probably one of the greatest we've ever seen. If we can take that from the field and apply it to this newer group of guys, I'm all for it.
And you know, Tyler, it's funny that Jake, you mentioned that Saints game, because I remember that injury, that Saints game, that when you saw the tears in his eyes, I mean, the physical emotion he had, it brought me to tears, and especially because quarters before that, he took the blocked field goal and took it all the way to the house, and that was one of my favorite memories of him because it was such a cool time. It was one of his first touchdowns. He was known for, you know, his turnovers. He was known for his big hits and his coverages. But as a special teams touchdown for a team like the Panthers, who for whatever reason we just don't do well with teams. I don't know why. You have who was that kicker in 2013, 2014? Oh my goodness.
Orlando Mare.
The amount of times I've screamed about Orlando Mare, the amount of games he lost us in that 2013 season because he missed extra points and field goals, I had aneurysms watching him. I had to.
This is before they moved the field goal, the extra point back.
It was before they even changed it. It was regardless. Going back.
You know, when you talk about Luke and you talk about the next step and whether it's coaching or not, you know, there's no question that his football mind is brilliant. You know, the one thing, there's no way that somebody's going to be where they're going to be, and yet he was there. He always just, you know, and I guess it's studying film or whatever, but he just was constantly in the right place at the right time, and you're just going, wow. And the thing I love about Luke, and what blows my mind about the injuries, is this, and it's simply this. If I could show a group of kids how to tackle, that would be the video I would show. Because in today's world where it's let's knock them on their butts or let's knock them into, you know, next week, Luke, you know, shoulder, head up, and to him to have the injuries that he did, and yet to me, he was one of the most pure tacklers that I've ever seen play. That's what blows my mind. So, you know, coaching wise, absolutely. And I think that, you know, I'm hoping it's Carolina. He would be great for the Panthers. It would be great for the city. And we can talk about it as we talk a little bit further or whatever. But I think they still kind of need the Carolina Panthers still kind of need that star power in some way, shape, or form, whether it's on the field or off the field.
Yeah, you know, we took him 12th overall in 2012. And he blew up the combine, you know, 240, ran 4.58, you know, tested out of the gym, you know, but it wasn't that which was what got him drafted at 12th. It was everything up here, you know, his mental game, you know, coming out of college, it was just unreal, and it carried over into the league. And that's what really made him great.
And that's the horrible irony of it all, is that his mind for football was so great, but he couldn't protect it well enough. And even with tackling the right way, and it just shows the NFL still needs to make, you know, some improvements on that regard. And I think it's actually cool that you're talking about he was always there. He knew. I mean, you see the videos, and that's what I always get irked when people underestimate his talent, because I've never seen another linebacker who knew the other team's plays so well and who called them out right before. And so I think it might even if he didn't coach, say he joins Greg or he goes the same path as Greg, a Tony Romo for the defense. Yeah. And you have Kuechly. There's like Kuechly would know what the offensive plays are for most teams before Tony Romo even could say it. I think that'd be hilarious to hear. You have Tony Romo and Kuechly in the booth, or Greg and Kuechly in the booth. Just no play-by-play. just two color guys. They're all just predicting everything. I think that'd be awesome. But I talked earlier about had Gamecock football on the mind. Talking about favorite memories for Luke, and another one that always strikes me is the Thanksgiving Day game back in 2015 on that Super Bowl run, and Kuechly had the back-to-back interceptions and the pick six, and especially because for whatever reason, I mean, we did have, looking back on it, we had a pretty easy schedule. You started out with the Jaguars, you started with the Redskins, the Jaguars and the 49ers, two teams that weren't really that tough at that time. And, you had the Saints without Drew Brees, and you had a couple other games. But for whatever reason, that Cowboys game, everyone was like, okay, Tony Romo was coming off an injury. He's coming back. The Panthers are going to have their first taste at a real team. And I never understood that because at the time I was like, okay, it's just the Cowboys. So for Kuechly to go like that, and then at the end of that pick six, to smack Tony Romo in the mouth like he did, that exuded everything that Kuechly was about. And then to do it again the very next play was just, wow, that's one of my favorite memories of Luke.
I know for me, my favorite memory would have been the 2013 season when we went 12-4, our first year making the playoffs with Cam. Home game, monsoon, all of that. You remember that game?
The Saints, yep.
The Luke Kuechly picked to end that one. That was my favorite memory. Obviously, that was a game that we needed as a team. Obviously, because we were young. Both our best players were both under 25 at the time. So we need a key win to seal the division up. That was a big win. That really helped propel us, I think, into the next couple of years that followed. If you remember how those next couple of years went, it kind of turned out pretty well.
And correct me if I'm wrong, that was where it was at the end of the game, and there was like a couple penalties. There was like a couple last-second Hail Marys, and they kept getting time on. And we were like, we just want to end this game with a win. And Kuechly sealed it with a pick. I do remember that game.
I think for me, it would be the NFC Championship game against the Cardinals. Carson Palmer and the Panthers were up big. I mean, the game was, there was no doubt who was going to win. But there at the end, Luke got the pick six, I believe, which gave him 55 points and pretty much sealed the deal. So for the defense and for him to be able to kind of not seal the deal, but just add to it and be able to celebrate that away, to me, and I remember the last, being at that game, the last, 20 seconds of that game, it's done. Just what a great moment. But for him to be able to get that pick and kind of seal the deal and get them to the Super Bowl, wow, just amazing.
Yeah, a little tidbit about that actually. So if you all couldn't already tell through the podcast, this is my father, Jeff Taylor, and so we went to that game, and it was funny because he had said throughout the season, I actually had not made it to a game that whole season, and he had said if we made it to the playoffs, we were going to go to a game. Come Seahawks game, we go to get tickets, sold out like that. I'm talking within 5 minutes. There was not a single ticket left on Ticketmaster, so we were like, okay, well, hopefully make it to the NFC Championship and we get to a game then. And I remember we were waiting. We were sitting at the dinner table trying to get tickets for the Cardinals, and it was the same thing. They dropped, sold out in 5 minutes, and he was like, well, man, that sucks. Like, maybe I could convince your mom to let us go to San Francisco. And I was like, no, I'm going to keep trying. And I sat there. I kid you not. I was refreshing the Ticketmaster page for at least an hour and a half, and I finally got the ding that said we got a ticket. And I'm screaming like, Dad, we got the tickets. Come here. Like if there was anything under $200, we were gonna go, and that was one of my favorite games I've ever been to. And plus that pick, you remember at the end of it when he's running down the sideline, that fan went to go dap him up, and he falls flat on his face. Yep. And instead of he went up and made sure the guy was okay, which exudes everything that Kuechly was about too. I mean, that's just the person he was.
Let me give you one more story since you brought up the father-son thing. Was obviously when we had pregame field passes, and we actually saw Luke during warm-ups, and I remember Jack yelling out Luke, and he actually came over and we said, hey, can we get a picture? And so we got a picture with Luke, and I think he actually talked to us for a couple of minutes and took the time to do that. It was just it's amazing. It's amazing, and I don't know if we're going to go down this road, but Hall of Fame, I don't see how he's not in it.
Yeah, Tyler, I don't know if you have any memories of.
Yeah, for the first thing that comes to mind about Luke is definitely the Cowboys, back-to-back pick sixes. But also for me was his pick six against the Seahawks in the divisional round. To get us off to a hot start in the game. I think we were up 7-0, and then that made it 14-0. And he was just a key player through all of that. So definitely.
That game gave me a heart attack because we had 40-point lead going into the third quarter, and they almost snuck a win out. And I hate it because my youngest brother is a Seahawks fan, and for whatever reason, since that's 5-year stretch, that was one of the most heated rivalries out.
Yeah, that turned into a rivalry somehow.
We played them every year, and they had kicked the crap out of us in the divisional round the year before that, when Earl Thomas got that pick 6. So yeah, definitely beating the Seahawks that year. I mean, actually, that when we talk about the Hall of Fame, I believe personally that he should be a first-round Hall of Famer because of how great his player score was. His rating was every year, and no linebacker, not even some DBs, had more interceptions than he had in that span. I mean, you think about he's defensive rookie of the year. He never was able to steal that defensive player of the year, but I mean, and then sportsmanship of the year award. I mean, I think all those speak for itself, and I think when it comes to it, I know he might not get that first bout because of the length of his career, but I mean, I think it's definitely going to be within the next, if not the first bout, 2 or 3.
Yeah, for Luke, I mean, if people can make the case for Eli Manning, then I can easily make the case for Luke Kuechly because when we talk about guys going to the Hall of Fame, at what point were you the best player in your position? Luke, probably from year 1 to the end of his career, arguably the best middle linebacker in the game of football. So I mean, there really isn't, aside from length of career, there really isn't a valid argument against why he shouldn't get in. Because I mean, every year he's in the top half in tackles. In the top half, he's top in every category that you would love for a linebacker. So aside from length and aside from the Hall of Fame kind of it kind of BS some of these votes sometimes. So I mean, we'll see. But I mean, he's the first ballot Hall of Famer in my mind.
Yeah, definitely not having the defensive MVP accolade does hurt, but I still think he deserves it too, and we'll see what happens then. So now moving on, a little bit lighter side. We've been talking about players leaving and the reminiscent, but I mean, there is a future in Carolina, whether it's a rebuild, whether it's we talked about. I mean, when Fox left, there was a necessity for him to go. We were done with him. He had spent his time in Carolina. The fans were ready. And I personally don't think when Rivera came out, I knew the name. I did not know much about him. And, I mean, as a first head coaching position, I mean, I don't think anyone thought that within 4 or 5 years, he was, within that first 7-year span, he was going to win the division for the first time back-to-back for the NFC South and make the playoffs, 3 times in a row that first, in those 3 years after that, 12-4, that 0-4 start, and then went 8-0 season. So I think that, the future for Matt Rule is bright, but I'm more so concerned about the coordinators. What are y'all's thoughts on these new coordinators?
I as I think about it, it's Phil Snow's defensive coordinator, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then help me out with the offensive coordinator again. Is it Baker's his last name?
Joe Brady. Joe Brady.
Got it. Sorry. The interesting part is so fresh and so new to it. It's just that realm of the college mind, the college thought process, the college mind coming into the NFL. It's just going to be a wait and see. And the interesting part about it is, the NFL fans, are we a content bunch to wait and see? It's always, are we cool enough to just sit there and let it all take its course? That's what how they make that transition, how they relate to the pros will be interesting.
As a Titans fan, more than most that having inconsistency in your coordinator position does hurt your team overall. How do you think that'll factor in for the Panthers?
Well, here let me go down a different road here, and I think it all depends on. It is really all going to boil down to, and I don't know where we're going with this. It's all going to boil down to me to on the offensive side of the ball. It's whether you bring Cam back or not. I think you've got to sit there and figure out, and you've got to figure that part of it out, because I think the Panthers right now are at the situation where you've hired, Snow, you've hired Brady, you've hired Rule. Okay, you've wiped the slate clean. You might lose Greg. You've lost Luke. where does Cam fall into this? Do you just blow everything up? And I think if you blow everything up and you have the new coordinators and a new coach, I think that gives them a little leeway to kind of to figure out where to go with it. And let me say one other thing about, and we might be talking about Matt Rule in just a second, but I'm gonna kind of jump the gun on that. You know, no matter what you do, stay the course. David Tepper has talked about this being a process, and he's talked about 3 to 5 years. You know, Matt Rule has talked about let's remember this is a process. Stick to your guns and do what you're going to do and give it time to grow. Because as you mentioned, Jack, with the Titans, you bring in coordinators every 3 or 4 years. To me, you destroyed Marcus Mariota. You've pretty much threw that away. You have head coaches come in and out. And the interesting part is you take somebody, and I'm going to tell Matt Rule this when I say stay the course, do what you're going to do. Same thing with the coordinators. When Mike Vrabel this year all of a sudden said, listen, I've got to figure this out, and I'm going to stay my course. I'm going to bench Marcus Mariota. You know me. I was like, what are we doing? And you're going with Ryan Tannehill. He had a plan. Mike Vrabel had a plan, and he had his coordinators. He said, here's what we're going to do, and you go do it.
I think my biggest concern is, again, much of what you said, just them being collegiate coaches coming into this NFL game. And with a veteran quarterback, who do they really want? Like, I mean, I know for me personally, I want Cam to stay. We're only paying him $19 million, so I would love for him to stay. That's the cheapest option you can get for a franchise quarterback. And franchise quarterbacks don't grow on trees in the NFL draft, no matter how pretty they look as prospects. So, it's all gonna boil down to, for me, what's the plan? What do they have in store? I know it's tough for them because coming in, you expect to have Cam. If you decide to keep him, cool. You expect to have Luke. Now he all of a sudden retires. You kind of knew Greg was on the fence coming into this, so I don't think they really were banking on Greg being there. So it's just, I like the thought of the freshness they can bring to our offense with a lot of young pieces. If you think about Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, that's a collegiate style core, like anywhere you go, and you can do so many different things with that. So I mean, it's all about who they feel like they want to bring in. Phil Snow, I'll have to see with him. He'll have his work cut out for him, but obviously not having Luke there. Joe Brady, he obviously did a tremendous job with Joe Burrow. I think he is the biggest reason Joe Burrow took that big leap from 2018 to 2019 as far like that. So I think to me it's going to boil down to what they want to do with Cam, and once they decide that'll determine what the future is going to look like, at least for the next 2-3 years.
Yeah, so I actually have interest in coaching. So with Joe Brady, I kind of followed his career path. And so he played receiver at William & Mary, was the receivers coach after that, coached linebackers there, got his grad assistant, which is like a assistant coach at Penn State. And he was there with Joe Moorhead and Trace McSorley. And from there, he went to be the passing game coordinator for the New Orleans Saints. Went to LSU as the passing game coordinator, and now he's the offensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers. So it's just interesting to see, I thought he brought some of the concepts from Penn State with Joe Moorhead into LSU, and same with New Orleans into LSU. And I really think his, such an explosive offense. I think it's about getting athletes in space in one-on-ones and making the most of them. And, that does give me some concern because, with LSU, they had, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But, we have no shortage of talent there, like DJ Moore, Samuel, and McCaffrey, as Shantis was saying. Like, those are guys that can win in one-on-one situations. And so I think that'll be good. It is a bit concerning, the college transition. And he's a younger guy. Then you have the ability to command a room and, really have a leadership role in the team. And then with Phil Snow, older guy, but pretty much most of his career was in college, even though he was with the Lions for a little bit. But, in the Big 12, Baylor, they had 3 fronts. With three defensive linemen. So that probably won't transfer into the NFL, but, it'd be something to pay attention to. But, I was excited about the Brady hire, and then I'm still happy with the Snow hiring. So, we'll see how it goes from there. But, I couldn't ask for anything better.
Let me. Hey, can I throw one thing in? let me throw this in real quick. And the caveat is, and I'll bring in the older generation of it, is so many times when you think about college coaches who've made the transition to the NFL, it's not been good. You talk about the Steve Spurrier, you talk about Chip Kelly, you talk about Harbaugh, you talk about these guys who were these big name college coaches who make the shift to the NFL, and it's just been disaster. Other than maybe Jimmy Johnson, we know how successful he was, but all these other ones. So I give Tepper a little bit of credit because here's what he did. He took a young college coach who wasn't really, in my opinion, in the forefront of college football coaching. Nick Saban is another one who just was a disaster in the NFL. So you didn't go after Lincoln Riley. You didn't go after Dabo Sweeney. You didn't go after those guys. What you did was you found a guy who took a program that only had I think 2 wins 3 years ago, and took him to this. The energy, the passion, the excitement he's going to bring, I think, with his system, and because we don't know a lot about him, I think that's going to be a big plus.
Yeah, I think that is a good aspect of it. I still am weary, just because you never know. I mean, but the fact that he was able to, that turnaround is what really is what made me okay with all this, because that turnaround is what Panthers fans are going to be looking for. With Snow, the only thing I want to see from him is he needs to revitalize his rushing defense, because with the defense, with the front seven that we had last year, with KK going out, that hurt us. With Brian Burns fighting injury and Bruce Irvin's fighting injury at the beginning of the season, that hurt us too. But this front seven should not have let up the amount of rushing yards that it did. I don't know if it was something with the new formation, if it was just something that it was the lack of execution. But I mean, that's what we were known for. Our defense has been our staple of the Panthers for the past decade now. Even with all the flash we'd had on the offense, I mean, it was the dominating front seven. I mean, that's how we dominated in the 2015 Super Bowl run, was turnovers and lack of rushing yards that we let up. So I want to see that from Phil. I'm okay with sticking with the old formation, with the new formation without Kuechly. I don't know if it will work though. And I think without Davis this last year, I think it didn't work either. But I mean, that's up to him really. What he can do what he wants to do, depending on what we do with that linebacker spot with some of the older defensive linemen. From Brady, the one thing I'm concerned with, and I think this is with the Cam concern, is that you've talked about. I mean, other than college, I don't know, some of the earlier years, but I do know when working with passing for the Saints and for LSU, obviously, both of those were very pro-style quarterbacks and pro-style offenses, not very mobile, not very, flashy. And I think Norv was able to adapt and put out a really good offense for it, which is why I was surprised. I mean, I knew Norv's age. He couldn't have stuck around that much longer, especially with the new head coach. But I'm concerned with Brady's ability to either adhere to Cam, or whether or not he might just try to influence the decision to move away from Cam to go for a pro-style quarterback, whether that be in the draft or, God forbid, Phillip Rivers in the free agency, which I'm praying to the Lord. Because honestly, if that happened, I might go with the Titans full time. But the one thing I want to see from Rule, really, it's been something that I noticed last year, and especially with all the work that Tepper has done to provide and really improve the fan experience at the games. And a lot with, the TVs in the bar areas, he's got the concessions upgraded. He's got that stadium looking nice. He's doing things like customizing jersey options so that they look a little bit better. The Ring of Honor that is actually for the fans and the players. I want to see Matt Rule revive the home winning streak, because 2-3 years ago, we were not losing games at home. We just weren't. We had one of the longest active home winning streaks in the NFL for about 3 to 4 years, and it was a tough place to play. I absolutely love Bank of America Stadium. I'm so happy that Tepper, for the most part, has seemed like he's going to keep that stadium there the way it is. I just want to see. I mean, it was so evident at the Panthers-Titans game back in, I think, October it was, the past couple games before that had been rainy, had been, crappy weather, but that game was 65 and sunny. It was a 1:00 game. The 49ers game the week before was rough, but up until we still had a 4-game winning streak, and Kyle Allen was still doing. It wasn't like the Steelers game, 2 years ago, and there were no fans. It was empty, and that was our last win at home, and that made me really. It broke my heart as a fan and as a Panthers fan to see that many. So I think in order to keep, and I'm not saying that it's on the team bring fans in. I'm saying the fans should not be fair weather fans. They should be there through thick or thin. I just expect more from Carolina Panthers fans because, or even just Charlotte fans, because they have, for the most part, stuck through with god-awful sports franchises like the 2010 Panthers or the 2007 Bobcats. So that's what I want to see from Matt Rule in his first year.
I know for me, it's bring back that defense that we all know. Like we've hit it already. You know, the offense is going to be the offense. We have weapons on the offense, so I don't feel much pressure about that offense coming into this year if we decide to keep Cam. But we need that physicality back on defense that I don't think we've had really since that 2015 season, because even after that, things started to unravel. We can get that back, and it's gonna be a lot tougher now without having the staple and Luke Kuechly there. So, but if you can work on getting that back, that's gonna be the key to having championship success, because obviously having great defenses can take you a long way in this game.
You know, for me, I think, you know, as I said, you know, stick to the process year one. You've got a plan, go with it, and stick with it. And, you know, and the interesting part is, you know, we talk about Cam not coming back, maybe not. What do you do with it? I think Tepper and Rule are really in kind of an interesting spot, because if you guys think about it, the NFL right now, and I'm being honest, and you guys can back me here, maybe or maybe not, the NFL is really just average. There are just a lot of average football. I mean, think about it. I think if I know the stat right, there's only like 4 teams that over the last 4 years have had an actual winning record every year. The only reason I know that is because the Titans were one of them. So there we go. Anyway, but that was only 9-7. That's only 9-7. But the gist is, think about it as you go through everything. I mean, the NFC South, Drew Brees walks away. I mean, that's an average division. I mean, it's just, there's not, you know, a core of really, really strong, good football teams right now. So I think this shift of where we might see happen with the Carolina Panthers as we hit 2020, you got to be a little excited, because at least there's a freshness to it. And even if Cam's not there, you know, there's going to be this energy. There's going to be this kind of, you know, cool deal of, listen, we got a clean slate. Let's go play football. And I think Matt Rule, I love his energy and passion toward that. So when we think about it, don't get all, everybody, Carolina Panther fans, let's reel it in, because really it's an average league right now.
Yeah, you know where I'm at. I mean, Tepper's not afraid to just blow this whole thing up. And, you know, we kind of have seen that with the changing of the guard, you know, some of the old players leaving and Rivera gone. And, you know, he's not messing around. And bringing in Rule and signing him to that huge contract, I mean, I think it was like 10 years, 70 mil. So he's locked in. Yeah. So, but, I mean, I do like that he's giving him the time, and he's going to, you know, let him fail early on. You know, he's not going to be on the hot seat after a bad year, you know. But from Rule, I really want to see him, you know, just commit to a plan and just go all in on it. You know, if he's going to get rid of Cam, I mean, God forbid. I mean, I would probably disagree with that. But if he is going to let him go and then just go all in on a new guy, and, you know, preferably you'd probably want to trade up in the draft, you know, to get their guy. But, I mean, personally, I want him to stick with Cam, because, you know, a lot has changed in Cam's career, and I mean, with the injuries, and of course, but that's the only like gripe against him. He's been nothing but good. I mean, but you think about him coming out of Auburn, you know, he was a freak. You know, he took that team with not a lot of talent on it, and he won the national championship. And comparing that to I mean, every year in the draft, there's these shiny new prospects that every team wants. But so I don't think they need to get caught up with that. And personally, I want to see them keep Cam, but if not, you know, move on and just go all in without him.
Definitely. I think it's a weird feeling in the air. It's up in the air for the Panthers this offseason, and there could be a whole lot of change. And it's really one of the first offseasons where I don't think any of us really know what the team is going to look like come September. But in this kind of tumultuous offseason, I think we need a little bit of light. We need a little bit of lighthearted stuff. So, Jeff, I know you said you got a little bit of a kicker for us.
Yep, here we go. So, little fact for you, fun fact. So, pro football actually started in Charlotte in the 1930s. There was a team actually called the Charlotte Panthers. Where they got that name, I haven't been able to figure that one out yet. Banthams, yeah. And then actually 41, part of the Dixie League that occurred, it was the Charlotte Clippers. But here's the fun one. 1970, there was the World Football League. Didn't last for long. But you want to guess what the name was of that team? Anyone?
I gotta.
The Charlotte Hornets.
Really?
The Charlotte Hornets played in the 1970s World Football League. And they actually played at Memorial Stadium, which was close to downtown Charlotte.
We didn't at Memorial Stadium. Is that what you said?
Yeah, Memorial Stadium.
I had no idea. That's funny because they were talking about tearing Memorial Stadium. They were at one point talking about tearing Memorial Stadium down to make room for a new MLS stadium. They didn't end up doing that, but that's kind of cool. That I'm also, that's something we're going to talk about in the future. I don't know when, but I'm really excited for that MLS team coming to Charlotte. I know it doesn't really have a whole lot to do with the Panthers, but I mean, they have seen success in Bank of America with hosting soccer games. And I think that it's a really good move for the city, bringing another, especially since, that's another major league sport that we can have now. That, and I think it's going to be really cool. But so for next week, we've already got some topics for you that we are going to talk about, for just a little tease for y'all. We're going to talk a little bit about there's been a lot of debate about, paying about the money and the budget for the Panthers offseason, and whether or not we give it to Cam, we cut Cam, save that $19 million, whether or not we exercise a fifth-year option on McCaffrey or give him the contract he deserves. But that's something we're going to talk about, because there's been a lot of debate, and especially from the fans, of what they want. Talking about this last year, we talked about the changes that Tepper's made. This past season, they started in their first annual Ring of Honor for the Panthers, inducting Jake Delhomme, Jordan Gross, Steve Smith, and someone help me out with the tight end. I was
Wesley Walls.
Wesley Walls, thank you. And so I imagine they're going to continue that. I don't know if it's going to be an every 4 years thing, every 2 years, every 1 year, but if they do continue it next year, who are the four guys that y'all would want to see inducted into this next class? And then last but not least, I know it's way too early, but it's the offseason. We got to talk about it. We're going to bring up some draft prospects that we believe the Panthers are looking at, or at least should be looking at. But that's all that we got, guys. So until next time, everybody, keep pounding.
Keep pounding.